night, friends. Welcome back to the Friday Night Prepper pre-party show, and you're in for a treat tonight. I am very excited about my returning guest, she is backstage. I'll bring her out here in just a minute. I'm just going to give people a minute to get to notifications while I go through a couple quick announcements. So, first of all, if this is your first time on the channel, please be respectful to each other in chat. Please be respectful to the mods. If you have anything you want to disagree with me, go ahead. That's fine. Just be civil. My mods have full permission to put people in timeout or boot you off if you're getting out of hand. We don't usually have a problem here, but sometimes we get some new people in here. I just want to make sure everybody knows the rules. I do have a giveaway coming up at the end of December. Not going to get time to talk about that tonight. Stay tuned. I think next week I'm going to give you the full details. Basically, you just have to be present in that live stream, and it's not going to be affiliated with YouTube or anything like that. This is just me putting up a little bit of my own money to share back with y'all for all the support you've given me in the past year, helping me get to 6,000 subscribers. If you get anything of value out of this tonight, please consider giving me a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. And please, if you enjoy our guest tonight, check out her channel, which I've got scrolling across the bottom. I've also got it in the description. I've also got a link to her Instagram in the description and a link to her website. But of course, we're going to go through all of that for you as well. A couple more quick little announcements. So tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time, LT Wright Knives, who I am a brand ambassador for. You guys have probably seen me use my Genesis in numerous videos. It is my hiking knife, my camping knife. They are doing a big event live tomorrow on YouTube from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I'm going to go ahead and link them right now in the chat. But if you're watching this afterwards or whatever, just look for LT Wright Knives official YouTube channel, 10 a.m. live stream, and you're going to be able to. They're pulling knives out of the vault that you're going to be able to bid on for and just in time here for Christmas to get it out to you for Christmas. So let me go ahead and drop a link for that. That's their official YouTube channel there. Okay. Make sure you check that out. I'm brand ambassador for them. If you go on their channel, you'll see that there's several videos that I've made for them. Go in the short section. I've done some foraging videos for them. Love working with them. Fantastic knife company. This is the same, that Genesis that I just showed you is the same knife that a lot of contestants use on the show alone, because it really is like the perfect bushcraft and survival knife. Okay. So check that out tomorrow morning. Last announcement here is it just hit the stands today. Your buddy Sarge is in this month's episode of this month's magazine of Off Grid Magazine. So go to your newsstands, check this out. If you can see it there, but I'm at the very bottom in that little hexagram thing. And there's an interview with me on page 28. Show you that real quick. It's all about trauma therapy and mental health resilience in survival situations. So I'm a trauma therapist by trade. That's my primary trade. I hope you enjoy the article. And I couldn't give you the full details on that because I had to wait till it was official, until it hit the newsstands, but very, very excited. And go to your newsstands. Please pick that up and check it out. Then let me know what you think of the article. Okay. All right. Let me check chat here in just a second, and let's go ahead and bring out my guest here, my returning guest. There we go. Welcome back to the channel, Jess. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for coming back. I appreciate you, and glad you're going to be able to share some knowledge with us tonight. And I've appreciated your friendship and getting to know you over the last year, and kind of communicating back and forth on Instagram and Facebook. And you're a great person, and I'm glad that I got to know you.
Thank you so much. That's such a huge compliment. I have learned so much from following you and watching you, and I really enjoyed the video that you posted about gifts. I was like, oh, I need a bigger bank account for some of those.
I know. There's some good stuff in there. It's easy to start spending up the bank account when you're looking at some of that stuff on there. Before we get started, and I'm going to check chat here in a second, say hi to some people. Where can people find you? And we'll hit this again at the end. And what do you have coming up? Like, what should people be looking for coming up from you?
So you can find me at fireflyfarmsteadherbs.com, and it's Firefly Farmstead Apothecary. And that's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. And I'm also on X, dabbling in X, trying to figure X out.
Yeah, and I know I was trying to link you on there, because I put up a couple posts about our live stream on there, and for some reason I'm having a hard time finding your account on there. So maybe send me a message. I know I did see it a couple times because we follow each other, but for
Right.
some reason this week I was having a hard time finding it. So maybe send me a DM so
Okay.
I can get it reconnected and back in my cycle here. I've got
Okay. Perfect.
28,000 people on Twitter, so sometimes people get a little lost in the shuffle there.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's wonderful.
It's been great. It's what happens when you don't get censored by a platform that I can actually get my message out to people.
Yeah. Same in the herb world.
Yep. Yep. All right. So let's say hi to a couple people. Scott Hummer was here early. Thank you so much. And James Rural 2, I see. It's good to see you. Let's see. I think I saw Sassy coming in. Vicky Savage, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you. Scorpion Metals, how are you doing tonight? Virginia Bushcrafters, good to see you. See, yep, I did see Sassy. How are you doing tonight? Thanks for helping with moderation. And did I miss anybody? Vanessa Kitty, thank you so much. Appreciate you for joining us. All right, I think I got everybody. So remember now, if you guys have questions, throw them in caps so that I can catch them and pass them on to Jess. So where would you like to start? I know we were going to talk a little bit about tinctures, but you also said you had some discounts and stuff like that. Do you want to go into that now, or do you want to hit that later?
Let's go ahead and knock that out and get that out of the way, because I'm really good at forgetting that kind of stuff. So I have a downloadable that I'm going to be putting up tonight. So that should be available for you tonight. And that is going to be my easy weights and measures method for herbal tinctures. So if you're looking for an easy, cheap way to make very precise tinctures, this is going to be your go-to guide. And so your code for that is going to be SARGE. So you'll go to my website and then you'll look for it under the downloadables and you'll be able to get this for free. And so I teach this class usually a couple times a year in community centers as well as online, and it is a ton of fun. There are a couple different ways to make tinctures, and so that is one of the sheets that helps make it super simple and takes all the confusion out of it. I also have a discount code for anyone that would like some one-on-one guidance and helping them figure out how to best support their health. I am a holistic nutritionist and a herbalist, and I am not a licensed healthcare practitioner, but I have a long history of working in a clinical environment side by side with other licensed practitioners and really just helping people get to the root cause of what's going on. And some of the areas that I love to focus on are gut-brain health, because if you can get those two things under control, the rest of your life will be so much better. And it affects littles and their behaviors and in their moods. It affects those of us as we get older with brain fog and just being in general not as productive as possible. And then even as we get older. So I really encourage you to reach out for anyone that's got some brain fog and stuff or some GI stuff. You'd be amazed at how much better you'll feel once you get that under control. And again, you get a 20% discount and the code for that will be SARGE. So just for your listeners.
And that's the Firefly Farmstead that you've got on your name there. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for doing that for the audience. Really, really appreciate that. And I encourage everyone to please take advantage of that. Jess has a wealth of knowledge and you can learn so much by checking out her content. I strongly encourage you to do that. So we're going to get into a couple little things tonight. Keep in mind, audience, that when we talk about natural healing, we because of the way social media handles some of this stuff, sometimes we have to talk around things and encode a little bit, but we'll do our best to try to make it comprehensive for everybody. So when we talk about tinctures to start, because that was one of the topics we were going to get into tonight, can you, for the person who's never heard that term before, what are we talking about?
Okay, so tinctures are an extract. All tinctures are an extract form of herbal medicine, but not all extracts are tinctures. So if you're out at the health food store and you're looking at things and you'll see some things labeled extract and some things labeled tincture. The primary difference is going to be that your tincture will be extracted using alcohol. So we call that a menstruum, whatever we're using as the base. And so some extracts might be using vinegars. Some extracts might be using glycerins or glycerides, and some extracts, we can even make a honey extract. We can do something called an oxymel where we mix honey and vinegar. This is a really good example. It's a stress relieving one that I love. And it's got lemon balm and passion flower in there, and it tastes really nice. So it's good for kiddos. But the tinctures are specific to alcohol. So that's why in some of the old folklore and stories that you'll hear in Appalachia, grandma always got the best run of the booze. It was for her tinctures.
And so typically you need like high purity, right? Like you're talking about like moonshine or whole grain alcohol.
So that will depend on what herb you're extracting. So that is why I've created the PDF that I created and the downloadable to give you something that will work for most herbs. Now, if you have an herb that has a very high concentration of what we call resins and volatile oils, or even some of the medicinal alkaloids, you're going to need to use the higher proofs. So that's like, that is rum 151, so that's a very high proof. Or, maybe like an Everclear. But that's not generally always necessary. An 80 proof is a nice solid place to start. And then if you just don't know, you can use the rum 151. The propolis tincture that I have here by a local apiary, they generally use the Everclear. I believe that's what, 190.
Yeah, it's way there.
Yeah, it's very specific to what kind of medicine you're trying to make and what for. So that's where we start getting really detailed and really, in depth with our herbal medicine making. So we can do a lot at home with just home-based methods, and we'll talk more about that and go a little more depth in that. And I have some books and resources to show you that you can go to that are, people that I've learned from and mentored with over the years that will help give you some guidance. But in general, if you have dried herb plant matter and it's going to be like a leaf or a flower or something like that, not your pitches, not your roots, and not your barks, then 80 proof is going to be perfect. Beyond that, you'll need a little bit more information. But if you have any questions whatsoever, you can always message me, or you can check out that PDF and it'll walk you through it too.
Sounds good. I'm definitely going to be experimenting with this a little bit in 2025. So one of the things, like I have a mimosa tree that grows very close to me, and nobody else knows that, like, what it is or why it's valuable. So for those who aren't aware, I did a video about this a while back. Mimosa, some cultures will say that mimosa has very calming properties to it, right? So for like anxiety and things like that, some cultures have found that to be helpful. So generally speaking, from what I understand, and again, I'm like very, very surface level on this stuff. You grew up with this, right? You learned from your mom and grandma. Isn't that what you told me last time?
Yes. So I grew up with it, and then I went back to school for it. So my bachelor's is an undergrad that's specific for people that would be going into like a naturopathic doctorate. And then I did additional herbal training in medicine making and in clinical herbalism. So,
awesome. Okay. So, so with something like the mimosa flower, I might try with like an 80 proof and let it sit for a
mimosa
while.
flower would be great with the 80 proof, and mimosa is great medicine. Albizia is one of the really leaned into herbal medicines and traditional Chinese medicine for helping lift spirit and lift mood. What we call like a gladdening herb. I know some of these old terms.
So, and thank you for using the botanical name. I couldn't remember what it was. So I'm more of a survival forager. So I get myself in trouble a lot of times with some of the communities about this, and they're like, "No, you're using a name that's going to be confused with other plants," because I don't a lot of times remember the botanical names. And mimosa is actually a good example of that, because mimosa is also a tree in South America that has very, very different properties than the mimosa that's growing in my neighborhood. So what if somebody, before we get further into the tincture thing, what if somebody is like recovering from alcoholism or something like that, and they really don't want to even use that? Is there other options for them?
Yes, there's a few options that you can choose from. You can use vinegar extracts or glycerites, which is a glycerin extract, which would probably be, if you're looking for something for preservation purposes, if you're looking for something that is in that liquid form. A lot of good can be done just with a powder or with a water extract. And so you can make a simple decoction or tea, depending on what kind of herb you're using, or you can do capsules. There's just so many different options and opportunities. Depending on your sensitivity with alcohol, some people will add the tincture to a cup of boiling hot water and evaporate off the alcohol. So for them, they feel like that's a good way to combat that. So yeah, there's lots of options there.
Yeah, and that was a good example. Thanks for saying that. My wife is a chef, and she's sometimes she bakes with alcohol because the recipe requires that. But in baking, it pretty much takes the alcohol out of it and leaves the flavor with it.
Yeah, yeah.
Here's a question from Rural 2IC. How do you tell the base extract is in it if you are buying any tincture? Okay, so I think he means if like you're buying it from a website or something like that.
So it should be in the ingredients list. So on the back, let's see, all of mine are some that here we go. Some that I've made. So this is, it says, let's see, can you see that? Standardized fluid extract, echinacea. So I bought this for my littlest, and she's not about that high alcohol content, that bite that you get. I mean, it's not enough to cause any sort of issues, but it does give a little bit of a bite. And so when I look on the back, it will actually say in the ingredients and that there is glycerin in there. So it says USP purified water, and then it says vegetable glycerin. It has a small amount of alcohol listed, but that's more or less for preservation purposes.
Gotcha.
And glycerin is believed to not raise blood sugars. So some people are a little concerned about that if they have diabetes or other blood sugar issues. But in general, that's not a concern for this small amount that we're doing. Some of the benefits of using tinctures over using other forms of herbal medicine are the shelf life. I think especially like in the prepping community, I would say that would be a huge benefit. If you've purchased herbs because it was so much cheaper to purchase them bulk than it was to purchase smaller amounts, you can process them and make them into a tincture, and they keep indefinitely. You know, conventional wisdom is 5 to 7 years, maybe even 10, but grandma said they never went bad as long as the seal was good. And that's less about bacterial issues and more about evaporation. So you want to check those seals and make sure that the alcohol doesn't evaporate off, because then you're going to end up with a much more concentrated medicine than you started out with.
Okay, so that brings up a question for me then. So obviously there's stuff like, I grow a lot of oregano. And people ask me sometimes, like, what's the most important thing to grow as a prepper? And I usually say oregano, because oregano has antiviral, antimicrobial, antifungal properties, and it flavors just about anything to taste better, right? So if you're in some kind of survival situation and you're eating wood grubs, the oregano is going to at least make it a little bit more palatable. It's a wonderful plant, and it's so easy to grow and does well. So I can harvest my oregano every year and dehydrate it, and I store it in a sealed jar, cool, like under the cupboard, away from sunlight, that kind of thing. And it's, generally speaking, I feel confident that it's going to still have some medicinal properties in that form for several years. What if I made an oregano oil type tincture with that? Is it going to be more or less? Like, should I guess my question is, am I better off in that circumstance to hold it in its dried herb form until I'm ready to make the medicine? Or could I just go ahead and make the medicine and put it in a dark cabinet sealed up and it's still going to be fine?
So your dried herbs are generally only going to be medicinally potent. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to get some value out of them. So don't throw them all out.
Yeah.
But if we're really working with something that we need to see resolve and we need our herbs to work consistently and at the dose that we're giving them, if we've really got something going on that we need to treat, then we want to use those herbs or put them in a secondary preservation method like a tincture or an oil within a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. That's good for me to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then what about something like wild lettuce, right? So we have some forms of wild lettuce that grow around here. For those who don't know, wild lettuce is, some people have found it to give some pain relieving properties. Some cultures have used it in that regard. Wild lettuce, in my experience, does not dehydrate well, and it's not something that I've had good experience trying to do anything with it in that form. So that I would probably want to make, if I'm going to use it in that way, make it in medicine as soon as it's harvested.
Correct. And you would generally put that into an alcohol base,
Okay.
similar to like your propolis. So you're thinking anything that's resinous, sticky, tarry.
And that definitely is.
Yeah, pitchy. Yeah, like your pine tar pitch, that kind of thing.
Okay. So I think you had one that you were going to talk about tonight. Do you have a sample or an example you wanted to kind of talk us through? Okay.
Yeah, I'll run you through some samples of the different herbs that I would recommend starting with. Echinacea is a great one to explore because it is so good at being such a wide antimicrobial, and it's safe in many different populations. So I would recommend exploring this herb, learning more about it, and also it as a tincture. Another excellent one is Oregon grapefruit. Now, for your foragers and your hikers and your backpackers, Oregon grapefruit is great for tummy issues. It's going to help with microbes specific to the gut. So if you've got someone that, is concerned, maybe they had some unfiltered water somewhere, that would be a good one to have on hand. And then let's see, motherwort is one for mothers, and it also can help calm stress and anxiety. So that's a good one to have on hand. And let's see, we saw the Echinacea glycerite, the propolis. Let's see, I'm looking for, Eleuthero. And so this is an adaptogen. And this is, I cannot think of another type of herb that we would need more this time of year, the times that we're seeing right now. And adaptogens help fortify your body against stress, both mental, physical, emotional stress. So this is going to help your body overall. And this is a finished product. And you would pour this off and put it in these small tincture bottles and make it more manageable as far as dosing. But that's kind of what it looks like when it's sitting on the shelf. And so I will show you how we get from this to this to this.
Awesome.
In the speed version.
Okay.
So the PDF will have weights and measures information, but there is something called folk medicine tincturing. So this is just a simple, easy way to make your herbal tincture without doing all the scale measuring and all that. So all you need is a clean jar. This is one of the times where I really highly recommend that you sterilize. So I like to get everything nice and sterile, and then get your herbal powder. So this is my Eleuthero. Again, that adaptogen. And we're going to add it in here. See if you can see that. And this is finely powdered. So we want our herbs for tincturing, we want them dry and we want them powdered. And the reason we want them powdered is that the powdering allows more surface area to touch our alcohol, and then it will be able to better extract it.
Okay.
So if you generally, when you buy herbs, a lot of times they'll be either powdered or they'll be in what we call cut and sift. And so if you purchase cut and sift, you just want to grind it in a, if you have a Vitamix or some sort of coffee grinder, do that. And then
what if, let me ask a question right there. What if it was freshly harvested, like you were growing one of these things, and same thing, would you want to pulverize it?
Yes, but there are some extra steps whenever you're making tinctures and extracts with fresh herbs. And so that is a little bit more detailed. So I would recommend that you start out with dry and get the process down. And then you can move forward with your fresh plant material. And the reason for that is with the fresh plant material, you're going to introduce the possibility of more bacteria in there, or just more water content, which is you just have to be a little bit more conscientious about your weights and measures and your whole process overall. It's not difficult. All of this is just, if you've ever canned anything, you'll be a rock star at herbal medicine.
Great. I'm already learning so much. Like, you've answered like 6 questions for me already.
And then I have here, you don't need organic unless you want it, or like a smooth tasting alcohol, because the herbs don't know the difference and you're taking such a small amount. So this, I get this at BJ's because it's the best buy. Like, I'm pretty sure it's really just repackaged from a more expensive variety of vodka that comes in the same bottle.
Probably.
And I use vodka because we're gluten-free in our household, and by necessity. And but you could use other higher proof alcohols. Some unspiced, unflavored rums work great. You could use, well, you can even extract herbs in wine if you want to. I mean, that's an old method for doing that as well. But this seems to work really well, and you don't have to worry about the flavors and combating that. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to pour the vodka or the alcohol in here until it completely covers our powder. And then we want a little bit more, a little bit extra space. So we want a 1/2 inch to 1 inch above. It's not an exact science, but it will produce a good medicine.
And for us canners, we call that headspace.
Yes. Okay.
Right now, by the way, if the YouTube is monitoring this, they're like, oh, they got their finger on the button right now. So hello to the ghost YouTube monitors if you're out there.
No.
We're not going to be drinking anything today, so
no, we're not. Well, if you're not getting in trouble, you're not having any fun.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So you might need to stir it a little just to get it good and saturated in there. I don't know how well the camera will pick that up, but I have a little better view on this end.
We can see it. Yeah.
Okay.
So like air pockets and things like that.
Just
making sure it's getting all around.
Yeah. I have made tinctures and teepees, believe it or not, on site. I have made them in national preserves, and it has been a fun journey of sharing all this. And I appreciate everyone being here to learn. It's so important to keep these things alive.
Yeah, it is. And it's getting harder and harder to get this information out to people.
It is.
Yeah. Eli, I saw your question. We are going to come back to that, I promise.
So once we get this good and stirred up, then you're just going to cap this similar to what you see here, and make sure that you label and date it. You're going to be tempted not to, but make sure you label and date it. And then some books say 2 weeks. After 2 weeks of it sitting and extracting, that it will be good to make medicine out. Grandma always did 6 to 8 weeks, and that's what I do. So use your best judgment there, but I think the longer the better to get all of those different constituents out, because it takes longer for certain compounds and phyto constituents to get broken down and taken out of the plant wall. So like the bigger nutrients are going to take longer than the smaller. I don't know if that makes sense, but
it does.
So you'll cap it and you'll shake it as often as you think about it. You'll keep it in a cool, dark place. I have a whole little hutch devoted to these types of projects. You don't have to shake it daily, but you don't want to skip too many days, because what will happen, especially with this powdered, this fine, is it'll settle down and you're not going to get the contact with the surface area to continue to extract the herbal medicine from it. So once you're done there, and after your 6 to 8 weeks, then you have a Luthero tincture, and you can take this. I generally take 1 dropper full, and so that's about 25 to 30 drops 3 times a day. Anytime I'm feeling under the weather, anytime I'm feeling stressed, again, both overall emotionally, just stressed. If you feel frazzled and frayed, like, I don't know what I need, but I need support. If you're experiencing repeated colds and flus and things like that, and you don't really have an exact reason why, then a gentle adaptogen like a Luthero can be very beneficial. And we will add, if you're taking any sort of over-the-counter or prescribed medications, if you have any underlying conditions, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, it is always best to check with your practitioner and your healthcare providers and your pharmacist.
Yeah, and let me jump on that for a second too. So for those people who've been with me for a while, you guys know I work in the mental health industry, and while I'm not a prescriber, I have been through hours and hours, like over 1,000 hours of training on different medications. So I'm not completely ignorant of the process either. And there is a little bit that I would add on here, and that's that sometimes there are things that interact with each other in a not great way. So again, I want to second what Jess said there about if you have medical condition where you're typically taking medication daily for something, then yeah, I would absolutely discuss this with your doctor so they know what you're taking in addition to what they're recommending for you. There are things that do not work well together. And thing two I want to add to this is I see sometimes, and again, I'm only like surface level with this, fam. Like I don't have the same kind of knowledge that Jess does, but I see people giving out bad information on this kind of stuff all the
All the
time.
time. Yes.
And one example is St. John's wort, right? So
Yeah.
St. John's wort is a medicinal plant. It's a beneficial plant. But I see people recommend like, oh, if you have depression, take St. John's wort. Well, as somebody who works in the field of mental health, there are numerous causes for depression. It's not a one size fits all thing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different ways that might be manifesting in the brain with different neurotransmitters, right? It's so complicated that the doctors in my field have a very, very hard time finding the right medication for people. And this is sometimes why those medications get a bad rap. It's like, well, I took this and I had bad side effects. I took this and it didn't do anything for me. I took this and I became really agitated, because the brain chemistry for depression and what's causing it is super complicated.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that St. John's wort does not cure all depression. And it's actually contraindicated if the person has a psychosis as well. You can actually make the situation worse. So please be careful where you're getting your information from. Jess is going to give us some books and stuff today. And of course, check out her website. And I've recommended a few other people that I trust in the community. And Jess and I talked beforehand. We're on the same page on some of these names. Dr. Mark Meriwether of Vorderbruggen, April Punsalam from Wild Herb Academy are also two very good sources that if you have questions, you can check out their stuff as well. I know Dr. Vorderbruggen has a book. I don't know. He has a couple books. I don't know if April does yet. I'm sure she's probably working on it if she hasn't. And just be careful. Like, don't just go on Facebook and say, what do I take for anxiety? What do I take for depression? Maybe that's a starting point for you. Like, okay, let me research this more. Like somebody says, oh, mimosa for anxiety. Okay, don't just go with that. Research it more. Talk to other people. Get with somebody that actually knows what they're doing so that you don't make a big mistake.
Yeah.
And the third point I want to make is, as somebody who works in the field of mental health, I can tell everybody that almost all medications, modern medications, almost all medications come from either a fungus, a mold, or a plant, right? Very, very few have been designed out of thin air, so to speak. So the way that this typically works in the biopharmaceutical industry is, let's say that we have a plant that we know has some pain relieving properties, like willow bark, right, from the willow tree. So most people probably already know this, but it basically aspirin was designed out of willow bark, and the chemical compound, the structural component of it, the when you break it down to the compound level, what happens is they'll take a look at that, and then they make a design or form of it by changing that molecular structure just a little bit, and now they can trademark it, and now they can sell it. So, and sometimes it's more beneficial. I'm not going to say like modern medicine sucks and it's all terrible. So modern medicine, I have seen it save lives and turn people's lives around. So I'm not going to sit here and say that it's all terrible. I'm just kind of telling you how it works, and that most of these things have come from plants, fungus, or mold. And so when you know that, and if you really want to get into this and study it the way Jess has, you can really get very, very, very independent from that system, because you already understand how these things work on a compound level. I'm not there. I can't give you that information. I understand very, very basic surface level stuff of this. You got to train with the right people, read the right books, and the more you get into it, the more rewarding it will be for you. But just be aware of some of those cautions that I wanted to throw out there for that. Anything else you want to add to that? Those are my 3 big points.
Yes, no, so much. Those are great. Those are excellent points to make. And they're actually, I think, for some of us that have been in it for such a long time, and for me, when I was first coming up and learning herbal medicine, while I learned from my grandmother, I also went and I mentored and I tutored under other herbalists that were seasoned. And we took it as such, it was, like big nerd brain, very much about, the science and learning these cultures where it's not just folk medicine. It's not content. It's a true system of healing. And when you do that, you're asking what person has the disease, not what disease does the person have. And the reason you're doing that is because herbs and diet don't work like medicine, allopathic medicine and pharmaceuticals, and we don't want them to. And I'm like, I don't, every once in a while I might have FOMO where I'm like, well, if I had a license to prescribe, but then I'm like, no, because what I get to do, the freedom that I have to do, is to teach others how to take this information into their own hands and figure out what works best for their body. And that's something they can use for a lifetime. And they can apply that throughout their entire lives and for themselves and their families. And there's something so really rich and great about that. So you're absolutely right. That whole thing about St. John's wort's pet peeve, we chatted a little bit about it in the last live, and that was super poorly designed study to begin with. And interestingly, the particular type of depression, if you will, that St. John's wort works best are people that respond well to SAMI, if you're familiar with that, because they tend to have more of the seasonal depression, the depression that's affected by the shorter days. Now, that still isn't telling us very much, and I wouldn't say go take, St. John's wort just because you get blue during the lower light days and in the winter, but that's kind of one of our guiding elements in that. And you're right, depression, like many things, sometimes it's caused by inflammation, sometimes it's caused by trauma and processing. Sometimes it's caused by gut issues. That's a huge one. There's such a wealth of information coming out there. And I've seen so many people, especially recently, turn their lives around in ways they didn't even know they could by addressing their gut first, detoxing. And so we don't ask, what condition do you have? We ask, what's going on with you? What type of person are you? And we look in all these details and we match the herbs and the formulas to that. And that's why you can't just go to a health food store and pull one supplement off the shelf and have it work for you, which was how I started going to school for this, because after taking herbs that my grandmother would prepare for me, I went to the health food store when I was going to college, and they didn't work. And I was like, what the heck? I know they work. Like, I have all this history, but she helped raise me, so she knew exactly what I needed, and she was helping me put this stuff together. And yeah, connecting all those dots. It's been really amazing. And I love doing that with other people and sharing with all of you. And I hope that some of you will continue to explore this at least a little bit. You don't have to have this much information to do a ton of good for yourself or your family. And there's tons of herbs out there that are generally just safe, like our chamomile, our mints, our lemon balm. There's a ton of them that you can utilize that you can get great results with. Herbs are really considered a shotgun approach. There are many different compounds and constituents in each plant, and it varies depending on the location that it's being raised in. Whereas pharmaceuticals are like your sniper. But the problem is, if they miss their mark, they don't do any benefit at all, right?
And they sometimes do more damage.
And
Sometimes.
sometimes, yeah, there's a lot of collateral damage there oftentimes. So I would never want to live in a world without allopathic medicine, but I always think herbs and diet first, herbs and nutrition first. And if you don't get the results that you need, then you start integrating stronger therapies. And allopathic medicine really works best, in my opinion, with very acute issues. It doesn't have a whole lot of answers for the more chronic, ongoing complications that a lot of us are seeing.
Yeah, I generally agree with that. I agree. So yeah, and I hope I didn't scare people off by saying like, hey, you got to be like super knowledgeable on this. I just want people to be cautious on how when you start getting into this, be cautious and not generally accept like somebody on Facebook,
Don't get
forum.
your information from content creators. Get your information from people who have practiced. And that is something, there are some people that are actually herbalists, they've gone to school, but they haven't actually practiced. They haven't had that volume of seeing many different people. And I'm sure that's something that, certainly with your background, you can appreciate. You just, the minute you think you know everything, that person shows up like, oh, yep.
Oh, for sure. So I just to give an example of that, I participate in a few mental health forums on Facebook. And generally speaking, people are supportive and try to be helpful and give good help. But occasionally, like I'll find somebody on there that's like giving somebody really, really bad advice. Somebody said so, it was well intentioned, but they were talking about their own experience with trauma, and the way that they made their post, it was actually very invalidating to how other people deal with their trauma. And I don't think that was their intention. It was just like they were saying something about how trauma has really damaged them and stuff, and it does. It takes a massive toll on a person. But they were saying, the way they were saying it was like, you don't get stronger from trauma, which maybe that's how that person conceptualizes their survival, right? But there are other people who are like, I am stronger because of my trauma, so let's not invalidate them. You have to
Right.
be careful with some of that stuff.
Yeah, most definitely. Yes. And stories and history and sharing with one another is how we continue to perpetuate that knowledge and understanding and grow it that much more rich. So yeah, I really, and from multiple backgrounds, I think that's something too that happens in social media. Unfortunately, you can become a little bit siloed with whatever your specific content is. So that's why I deeply appreciate being here and being able to chat with everyone. And I hope that you will learn that herbs are super accessible no matter where you're starting at, and that there are safe ways to use them. Something as simple as just garlic and honey can really help this what I call sick season, when we're all eating way too much sugar and we're staying up later than we should be. And the what's going around, everyone's getting, something like that can really turn around things for you and your family and be simple and easy wisdom.
Yeah. What are a couple other like easy, safe starting points for people if they want to experiment with some of this stuff? Do you have like two or three that you'd say, yeah, go play with this, see how it makes you feel, see how your body responds to it? Do you have a couple that come to mind?
So the garlic and honey is an excellent one. And then to that, I would add learning to make cold infusions with marshmallow root. And that
Mm,
is because that is so good for your gut and for your tummy.
okay.
So super safe, lots of benefit there. We're starting to understand how important keeping the gut healthy is for our immunity and for our mental health.
Hmm.
And I have known some foragers and some wildcrafters that have, and some, backpacking, prepping people that have really gotten their tummy out of sorts from the travel and just kind of the lifestyle. So that's not to call anybody out on here, but
Yeah. Oh no, no. I've eaten some weird stuff, and even just like MREs. Like if
yeah,
sometimes when I'm camping for a few days, like I might not have access to a campfire, so I'm like, all right, I'll throw a couple MREs in my pack. Well, anybody who's eaten MREs for a couple days knows you're going to pay a price for that.
yeah, yeah. And so like the marshmallow root or slippery elm can be used. Those two are fairly interchangeable, but they also double as a good poultice for drawing out anything that you have that might be, under the skin, like if you have a little sliver or something. So there's a ton of ways to use it. So
Okay.
you get a lot of use out of that herb. I love, especially when I'm traveling or whenever I'm camping or hiking, I like things that I can carry with me that have multiple uses. So slippery elm or marshmallow root.
Okay.
Also, I would really encourage everyone to get familiar with one herb that can be a good antimicrobial. You mentioned oregano. That
Mm,
one's excellent. That could be your thyme. That could be your rosemary. That could be the echinacea that we mentioned, or Oregon grapefruit.
okay.
So those are
And-
two kind of good spots to start. Elderberry is fantastic. It
yes.
doesn't always do, it's not the end all be all. And there's different times to take elderberry versus taking your echinacea in different circumstances.
Okay. Eli had a question I wanted to come back to here, and I thought a couple people gave some good answers. Let me see if I can find it. Just gonna scroll back a little bit. Are you okay for a couple more minutes?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. All right. So my mom has lower back pain, and I know pain is complicated too, like depression. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot that needs to be assessed there. But just in general, if we could start like thinking about maybe some ideas that might move in the right direction. But lower back pain that that moves to her hip and then to her lower abdomen. Doctors haven't helped in the cause. Their natural pain is Are there natural painkillers? She's tried turmeric and other herbs. So I will say first, let me give my answer and then we'll see what you think. Number one, as somebody who's a trauma therapist, my first thought would be if this was somebody that was coming to me with that, would be I want you to have a full medical assessment to make sure there's not something like spinal going on or something like that.
Right.
Because the sooner you realize what it is, the sooner you can come up with a plan of care. There is also possibility that there's, sometimes mental health stuff can cause physical pain too, especially stress. Stress can cause physical pain and inflammation and things like that. But as far as something that might kind of give a little bit more comfort and just ease the pain, not necessarily fix whatever the problem is, what comes to mind for you?
So a lot. I would say if that person would like to message, that would be great because there's a lot more that I would like to at least, just offer up, not necessarily, you know, maybe they're not ready for a consult, but
Mhm.
just to give some ideas, then I can probably go into in this particular space before they pull the plug on us. But
Right. Yeah.
I would say that something topical would be a great place to start, especially if they're taking any sort of, see, we don't know if they're taking any sort of medications over the counter otherwise. And the turmeric, we don't know what dose you're taking that at. So that would be important to know what to expect. Fish oil in general can be very safe. And if we're dealing with something that is inflammatory or that is joint related, a higher dose fish oil, so that's the 2,000 to 3,000 IU range, is going to be very beneficial. It has so many benefits, and we have a lot of research to back that up. So I would give that a try. It is going to take quite a while. It's not going to be an overnight thing that's going to help.
Yeah.
Topically, you could do a copaiba essential oil. And if you need some information like on how to dilute that, just let me know and I'll share that with you. But copaiba and helichrysanthem are both anti-inflammatory. And so those are two that I would think of. A more gentle internal option would be a tea with maybe, I would do some chamomile, and you could consider, like for myself, what I've seen very beneficial is chamomile and passion flower, to really help ease any tension that's going on. In addition to that, I would consider some gentle movement.
Mhm.
As a female myself, I know sometimes, I don't know what age your mother is, but I know she's a mother, and sometimes we get some dysfunction in the muscles in the lower abdomen and in the hips. So we don't know if something's gone on there in the past and it's flaring at this age. So getting some gentle movement in, some qigong, tai chi. Wouldn't necessarily do yoga because that can have prolonged stretches that we don't know if that's counterindicated. Again, definitely reach out to your doctor and continue to be the squeaky wheel and see maybe what the root cause is if they can find anything. But I know a lot of times with chronic pain, they don't. And I hate to say it, especially as females, we just kind of get sent home. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just trying to read that, but
So Vicky says, I have vertebrae in my neck and back that are degenerated, not the discs, but the vertebrae. When I went to pain management, they told me I could have anything I wanted. Yeah, it's hard because some of these things are so debilitating, right? Like
yeah.
and also like what you're going to have access to definitely varies state by state, so here in South Carolina, for example, we don't have access to medical cannabis. You can get CBD, but you can't get anything really, that would be what like California or New York could get for in terms of like lab tested medicinal marijuana. It's just
Right.
not going to be easily
No.
accessible. Yeah.
Well, and that is, while very beneficial for a lot of people, having spent a lot of time in Northern California and Oregon, I can say it doesn't work for everybody. So, even then, and there's a reason, just because of the climate there, so many herbalists are from that area. You still have to get very skilled in figuring out when that's going to work and which types will work there. There are other herbs that can be sourced that are completely legal and non-narcotic that do a better job at helping with pain, but it would be outside of the scope of what I could offer just in this conversation. So I can give you a quick rundown of just some herbs to think about, but you would really have to do your own due diligence in figuring out which one would be safe and effective for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of what I thought too. I mean, a couple come to my mind that if it was me, but I don't feel comfortable recommending it to somebody with just what we have access to here for information. Yeah.
Your passion flower falls, into a safer category and definitely will provide, some relief for a lot of people.
So there's a question here from Claude Ortega. Can herbs be picked after it has been dried in the wild, still rooted, or is it better to pick while still green, then turned into a tincture? Any books explaining time for harvest? So I'm not sure what you're going to say to this. As a forager, I generally will leave that be personally. I'll give it to nature. There's nothing that I need, that I'm gonna take something that's already kind of drying in the wild. So I personally would give that back to nature, but I might mark that spot mentally and come back to it looking for fresher stuff. What I learned was when I'm harvesting my oregano, or if I wanted to take the mimosa flowers in my neighborhood or something like that. First of all, number one, ethical rules of foraging: try to take only a third of the plant or less at a time so that the plant can keep growing, and then let it rest for a little while before you harvest from that plant again. Um, and early in the morning is generally what I was taught is better, because the medicinal compounds tend to go back into the earth after the sun rises. Is that true? Do you concur with that?
Yes. Earlier in the day, the better, especially when you live in a very hot, humid environment. Um, to I think the question that they were asking, I believe, is once the herb is already dried on the plant itself, could you harvest it and just kind of let nature do that work? And what I was taught and what my mentors taught me um, through harvesting and foraging and even gardening is that the plant will pull those phytonutrients down into the roots
Mhm.
as it dies off. So it's not just really leaving them there, it's actually still using them as the plant dries. So that's why we harvest the root actually in fall before the ground freezes, but we harvest the aerial parts usually earlier in the spring, or when the plant is a little bit younger. And then obviously if it's a flower, you have to wait for it to flower and blossom and bloom. It would be nice if we could do it that way. And I would always say, with something like that, you can always experiment with it. Like there's no
Mhm.
harm in that.
Mhm. Okay. Um, Vicky says, I told pain management that I did not want opiates. I'm strange enough and don't need any chemical assistance. Yeah, and if you can do it without those things, there's a lot of value to looking at other options, right? I hate to say this because I know some people have to have them, like if you've got a crushed spine or something like that. And like I had an emergency surgery where they had to remove my lower part of my intestine, and I was on some very pleasant opiates in the hospital. I mean, I was basically the only way I can describe it is if you've ever watched the 1970s version of Doctor Who. I felt like I was in one of those episodes, and I was for the amount of pain that I was in, because I could still feel it even through whatever it was that they were
Wow.
giving me. But I was grateful for the relief that it was giving me. So, you know,
Right.
I, there's a time and place for that, right? So I took a snake bite class, and they told us in the snake bite class, there was a lot of EMTs in there, and they said, well, what do we give them for the pain? And they said, give them the fentanyl. They need it. Give them the fentanyl. YouTube probably just got really pissed off about that one. That probably got us in trouble. But we're not talking about the street stuff that like is very dangerous that you shouldn't be touching. Like that is not good. We're talking about
Yeah.
like the medicinal stuff that's carried on an ambulance for people that need it for stuff like that. So there is a place for those things. If you can do it without it, I think there's a lot of value to considering what's your least heavy hitter, right? Like
Right.
what can you use that's going to have the least side effects, least addictive potential, and things like that.
And I would just encourage everyone to know that there are herbs that are beneficial, and that um, through the process of bringing the inflammation down in your whole body, you will
Mhm.
see the herbs that, they're not these other pharmaceuticals, but you will see them work better.
Mhm.
So that can be hard for people to kind of wrap their minds around when they're in that pain. And whenever I see them, they're like, I just need it to work right now. Why are
Yeah.
you making me work on my diet? Why are you making me change all these other things? It's because we need the overall inflammation that's happened in your body to come down so these other things can work better. Does that mean that you're not going to have pain if you have a chronic pain condition? Very likely, possibly not. I mean, I have seen it resolve for people. I'm not saying it won't, but I'm just saying there are situations like that, you might have a chronic pain condition, but what we want to see is that your good days become the majority of your days.
Mm-hmm.
Your bad days become lesser and lesser. So we want to start closing that gap so that you get quality of life back. And what I will say as a person with chronic pain since my late 20s, it is possible to get your life back. I don't know what that looks like for you, but if I could give anyone a message, it is possible.
Yeah.
It is possible. Now,
quality of life, right? Quality of life.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes a pharmaceutical provides the relief that you need to implement other measures, but I always advocate for implementing other measures. I think allopathic medicine should be a bridge to get us to where we need to be so that we can do the things that we know that we should be doing that we couldn't do without that extra little bit of support. So I think that your audience is really wise because they're looking for other solutions and they're not just pausing in that.
I think, since we're talking about like pain issues and things like that, I think that it's worth considering that there are some examples, like not everything that comes from the earth, it doesn't mean it's always guaranteed to be good for you, right? Like there's stuff that might make you feel better, it might make you feel good, but it also might have some problems down the road or create addictions and things like that, right? So I had a patient that I was working with a long time ago. I'm not going to violate anybody's confidentiality or anything, but she had a severe spinal issue and she was struggling so much with how to manage her pain. And she was asking me about kratom, which is kratom is, if you sourced it correctly, is something that comes from a tree, right? I believe tree root, as far as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But from what I've read, kratom can be for some people very, very addictive too. And so I just said, listen, here's what I've read about it. I think you need to be careful, and I think you need to talk to your doctor before you go down that route. And I have complete empathy that you're in a ton of pain, and I wish that I could take that away for you. But I don't want to see you develop a different problem because you're looking for that relief from that. But then a year from now or 6 months from now, you've got something else that we've got to deal with that's maybe even worse than that. What are your thoughts on that? Like, with just that mentality that some people have, like, oh, it's natural, it comes from the earth, so therefore it's good.
Well, I mean, I would say it works. However, that would be the reason why, because it is producing the result that you're looking for, and then you become habituated to it. And to your point, yes, kratom is known within the well-trained herb community to be problematic for some people, and it is used very sparingly, and it's well known in traditional Chinese medicine. And let's not forget that the original narcotics were plant-based, so that is, part of why we need to know and understand that. And I think we've been in a culture that doesn't really have that background knowledge, and that has created more problems where people just trust and take things without really researching, like, how long should I be taking this? How much should I be taking this? Should I be needing more of it? And so I think that's where, when you're because generally it used to be most people would be introduced to kratom through their acupuncturist who would give it to them in a formula. It wouldn't just be the one herb standardized and extracted. So we've taken things out of their traditional use and we've concentrated them, and then we've made them available in places like smoke shops and supplement stores where people aren't getting that background knowledge, and they're not getting it in a whole formula that would help buffer against that. And sometimes they're not even getting the whole plant, they're getting that extract. So you're right, people do need to be aware, but they also need to know that there's a whole nother group of herbs that they can use before they get to that level. And unfortunately, those types of plants get most of the PR, the ones that cause issues in some people, and the rest aren't really all that well known about. So,
and I think there's a cultural component that should be considered into it as well, right? So, you mentioned that kratom might have been used for hundreds of years by another culture in a very medicinal capacity. And when as we were talking about that, the thought that came up for me was, we know that some Native Americans used peyote as a spiritual, in a spiritual sense, as a spiritual component, and maybe in some medicinal sense as well, right? But there are other people not of that culture who would abuse it for recreational purposes, right? And so I think there's other components to this too, and the mindset that people bring to these things that can sometimes turn something that maybe could have been beneficial in some circumstances to now we've got something that's a problem for this person, right? And I would say cannabis is like that for people too, right? That
Yeah.
there are people who probably can benefit, and we, South Carolina, that's not even an option here, but there probably are people that could benefit from sleep or anxiety or appetite issues and things like that from some
And
of
there
the.
are some people that, even from a mental health perspective, much less an herbal perspective, probably would be better off not. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely.
If the goal, for example, with that one is to escape reality, I, as a therapist, would say, we need to help you come up with some other options here for managing what's causing you to feel like that, right?
Right.
So you and I have some similarities there in like how we're trying to help to treat the people that we're working with, in
Yeah.
that we want to know what the source is. Where's this coming from for you?
The root cause, always the root cause.
Yeah.
Yes. And your mention of some of the, shamanistic practices, um, we've kind of worked that as well. We've gone from, oftentimes it was the shaman that did the journeying on your behalf, but now people want to experience it. And it would have been such a one-off experience. It would have been a very potent, powerful experience that would not have been every Friday.
Right.
It just has just, honestly, I feel like it's a little disrespectful,
Yeah.
to be completely honest.
Yeah.
The way that it, and again, having been in like Northern California area where I've seen and mentored under really well accomplished herbalists, and then you have kind of the California herbalism. No disrespect to those that find their opportunities there and that practice there, but it it's not always the same. Like you're looking at a full spectrum versus offering a product, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot to it. The energy that you bring to anything, really. Alcohol's the same way, right? So many
Yeah.
cultures can sit down, and alcohol is a part of family sharing and dinner, and it's in a lot of those cultures, it's just not even like an abused drug. And then in other cultures or in individuals, they bring a different mindset to it, where my goal is to drink as fast and as hard as I can so that I can escape reality. Okay, I mean, I get it. We all want to escape sometimes. We all want to get out of the matrix. I get that, but if you're continually trying to get out of that matrix with something that's hitting your body really, really hard, there's going to be a price to pay.
Yeah.
And there's other ways to get that relief that people need.
Yeah.
Um, mindset, natural foods, fixing your gut, all of that stuff.
Yeah. But there is relief in natural methods and therapies, and it generally takes many different things. It won't just be one herb; it'll be multiple. And ideally, for those that mentioned and showed up today and that were asking about for themselves or their loved ones if they're in pain, the reason I can't just answer that question is because there's so many nuances. And
Yeah.
generally, we would make a formula specific to you. And that's not to be vague or, to say, come see me. That is the honest truth. Having been a chronic pain sufferer, having had severe joint inflammation and issues for so many years, the truth is that it just takes many different things. And so I would just encourage you, don't give up.
Yeah.
Continue to try things, work with other people, push for your answers because your quality of life is worth it. And I think, you and I both share in that we really want to help people,
Yeah.
and that we've probably, I would gather, both seen a lot of people suffering over the years, and we have a heart for that. And that's part of why I enjoy prepping, is because I want people to be as well and as vibrant and as okay as they can be despite what's going on in their outside world.
Right. Absolutely. Well, let's, I would love to keep going for hours and hours and hours, but I know your family is probably waiting for you. So let's start to wrap this one down. And I want to go over a couple quick things before we close this one out. For those of you who missed the intro, don't forget tomorrow morning, LT Wright Knives is doing that. They're opening the vault so you can bid on, buy some knives. That's going to be 10 a.m. at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at LT Wright Knives official YouTube channel. Let me go ahead and throw that in the thing right there for you again. There you go. Oops, why is that not? There we go. So that's where you want to go for that. If you forget, just look up LT Wright Knives official YouTube channel tomorrow morning. Definitely want to check that out. They did a little preview today of some of the stuff that's coming out of the vault, and man, if you like knives like me, you're going to be happy. You had a couple things you wanted to promote, and you want to talk about that discount code again for people who maybe came in late.
Yes, I will have a tincturing PDF or sheet with information on how to make your own tinctures using the weights and measures method. So that method is the one that I mentioned about, so that you can get real consistent results, and it simplifies that. And I created it as my cheat sheet so that I don't have to remake the wheel every single time. And so I will have that uploaded to my website. That's fireflyfarmsteadherbs.com. I'll get that done tonight, and I will try and drop a link below in the morning. Yeah, as a comment. And so just use the promo code SARGE. And then if you want to chat with me, if you need some more, if you'd like some more discussion surrounding some of the things that we talked about today, if you have questions, I love to talk to people about this stuff, about herbs, nutrition, health. I love to help people. So don't be shy, reach out. I also have some mini consults that you can access, just some, you can get some information from me. I know not everyone is ready to dive into an actual consultation. And if you are, then that's available also. And again, using the code SARGE, you can get 20% off for those for listeners.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And you do some classes periodically too, right? Like on your
I do
website.
offer classes, yes. And I don't have any scheduled yet, but there will be some coming for the new year. We're going to be focusing on gut and brain health. And so we're probably going to do a gut brain health detox and get everyone functioning and be as happy and healthy as they can for the new year, so we can achieve all those wonderful things.
I love it. I love it. Make sure you're checking out all of her content. I've got links down below. And then, you've got her website right there, fireflyfarmsteadherbs.com. Check that out. Get to know Jess and her content. I really enjoy you, and I enjoy the friendship that we've started to form and getting to know you. And without getting into specific details, we don't live terribly far from each other. So hopefully at some point we can meet in person as well. You are always welcome back on my channel anytime. You just let me know, send me a DM, and we'll set it up.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. And thank you guys for so many great questions. You have such an informed audience. It's always such a pleasure to be here.
My audience is awesome. I appreciate everybody. Thank you, everybody, for the questions and for all the fun. You guys always make all the chats on Friday nights fun. I look forward to this every Friday night. It's been such a fun journey for me to get to know everybody here, and the pace that my channel grows at is just enough that I can get to know new people as they're kind of starting to get involved in chat. So I don't grow so fast that like all of a sudden I got 3,000 new followers and I don't know who anybody is. I pretty much know everybody that's active with either comments or chat, and that's really fun for me.
That's exciting.
It is. So thank you so much. You have a great weekend, and thank you, chat. Thank you, everybody in the audience. We're going to go ahead and call this one a wrap. I always end with something really positive. So I know, given the news this week, there's a lot of people fired up about the healthcare system, and me too. And I've talked about this many, many times on my channel, my frustrations with the healthcare system as somebody who's inside that system. And I can't even speak freely because sometimes I have to censor what I'm saying because my job is on the line. So what I will say is violence is not the answer to this. We can't solve these problems by doing what happened this week with the United Health CEO. That's not the right way to go about this, but we can solve it by educating ourselves. We can solve it by helping to bring other people to the table and say, hey, have you seen this content? Check out this live stream that Jess and Sarge just did, and go check out her channel, and check out these books from Dr. Vorderbruggen, and educate people, right? So the more information that people have, the better advocate they become for themselves in healing their own bodies and making the right decisions for how they want to be treated. Okay. When we do that, we take the power away from the people at the top of the chain. And you can do that without violence, right?
Absolutely. Share your story, because your story will outlive you.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everybody. Let's call this one a night. Don't forget to check out Bacon later on tonight. Yeah, we could probably do a campfire chat at some point. We'll see if we can set something up. And everybody have a great night. Make sure you check out Bacon later on tonight. He does the late night live stream. And thank you, Jess. Keep planting your seeds, everybody. Keep stacking your silver. This is Jess and Sarge, and we will see you another day. Have a good one.